Bullets shattered the winter silence as flames licked at the ranch's walls. The Calhouns had come for revenge, determined to reclaim the woman they'd left for dead. Anna Parker, a widow once abandoned in the frozen Ironwood Valley, now stood bravely beside Wyatt Sanders, the richest rancher in Wyoming Territory. Together they faced down those who sought to control their destinies with violence and twisted faith. Would Anna and Wyatt survive this brutal confrontation? Could love truly bloom amidst vengeance and betrayal? Stay with us until the end to uncover the incredible twists that transformed enemies into allies and despair into hope. If stories of courage, justice, and redemption resonate with you, please subscribe to our channel and support the storytelling that captures the triumph of the human spirit. They found her half buried in swirling drifts of snow, close to slipping away from life's grasp. Her name was Anna Parker, and she had been left to die in a remote area known as Ironwood Valley. The small group of settlers who abandoned her in the darkness believed no one would ever find her. They assumed that without a husband, a homestead, or allies, Anna's fate was sealed. But fate often intervenes in unlikely ways, and on that bitter winter morning, Wyatt Sanders happened to ride his horse across that very stretch of lonely terrain. Wyatt was considered the wealthiest ranch owner in the Wyoming Territory. Though he never flaunted his good fortune, he managed over 20,000 acres of prime land, employing a dozen ranch hands who spoke of him with a mixture of respect and admiration. Typically, he would have been patrolling the far boundaries of his ranch via the main trail, a more direct and less perilous route. Yet his stallion Storm became restless at a fork in the path, almost as if the horse sensed something was wrong. Trusting his instincts and the unpredictable pull of Providence, Wyatt allowed Storm to steer him off course. That choice brought him upon a figure nearly concealed by snow. Anna, her fingertips rigid with frost, her breath coming in weak, ragged intervals. He dismounted quickly, shock tightening his chest as he bent down to check if she was even alive. Her skin was alarmingly cold. Her lips blue, tucked into her clenched fist, was a single worn wedding ring, a symbol of a past that had led her here to die. Gently, Wyatt removed his heavy coat and wrapped it around her, speaking words of reassurance she could scarcely hear. He noticed torn sheets of paper around her diary entries, smudged from melting snow, describing betrayal and desperation. Summoning every ounce of strength, Wyatt gathered her into his arms, hoisted himself onto Storm's saddle, and cradled Anna against him. The wind's howl grew louder, and the snow turned heavier, but he pressed onward toward his ranch house, driven by the urgency to save this stranger. His foreman, Tompkins, and several ranch hands spotted him returning at a gallop. Questions flared in their eyes at the sight of an unconscious woman clutched in Wyatt's arms. Without pause, Wyatt bellowed for help and for Doc Coleman to be sent for the household staff spearheaded by Mrs. Hayes. His longtime housekeeper hurried to prepare hot water and blankets. Upstairs in the ranch's largest guest room, they stripped away Anna's wet clothes and layered her in every quilt and blanket they could find. Even then, it was unclear if she would survive fever, and frostbite had claimed many on this harsh frontier, and Anna teetered precariously between life and death. Wyatt stood by the hearth watching as Doc Coleman arrived. The doctor examined Anna, nodding grimly. It would require time, warmth, and luck to pull her back from the brink. Wyatt clenched his jaw, anger igniting at the thought of anyone abandoning a widow in such a punishing wilderness. That was cruelty beyond measure. He vowed then and there that whoever was responsible would be held to account. Yet he also understood something else in saving this woman's life. He might be forging a bond that would change his own forever. Anna Parker hovered in and out of consciousness, her mind adrift in feverish dreams. Bits of memory surfaced: her late husband, Nathan, a gentle teacher who died of a raging illness the previous spring. Her modest cabin in the settlement. The council meetings where Elder Horner and the influential Calhoun family wielded biblical scripture as weapons of control. Through disjointed flashes, she remembered Harriet Calhoun urging her to remarry, claiming a widow could never stand on her own in such a ruthless land. Anna had refused, especially after Harriet's brother, Amos Calhoun, proposed to her. Amos's first wife had died under suspicious circumstances, and Anna wanted no part of his so-called protection. That refusal sealed her fate. One night, men from the settlement had burst into her cabin. Elder Horner stood grimly in the doorway, quoting solemn verses about pride and disobedience, while others bound her hands. They dragged her out into a wagon, ignoring her pleas. Harriet stood by her lips pressed into a vindictive smirk. "A widow in these parts must learn humility," Harriet had said coldly. "If you won't accept Amos's proposal, then you can fend for yourself in the wilderness." The wagon jostled through the frozen night. Anna heard their hushed whispers, sensed their resentment understood. They had decided it was cheaper and easier to leave a troublesome widow behind than to sustain her. After hours of bone-rattling travel, they dumped her in Ironwood Valley. Harriet's final words echoed in Anna's ears. "Remember your ring, dear. It will be all that's left of your pride." By the time she'd realized the magnitude of her betrayal, the wagon was gone, its tracks fading under new snowfall. For days, or perhaps only hours that felt like days, Anna wandered, trying to stay awake, trying to keep her limbs moving. She tore pages from her diary for kindling, but couldn't spark enough heat against the biting cold. Ultimately, she sank against a tree, more numb than afraid, whispering an apology to Nathan as she closed her eyes, convinced she would never see another sunrise. Then she heard distant hoofbeats so faint she thought they were in her imagination. A voice deep and urgent cut through the roaring in her ears. Arms strong, steady lifted her from the snow. Anna recalled a fleeting sense of warmth before the blackness claimed her again. The next time she surfaced, she found herself wrapped in blankets near a glowing fire, a woman's soothing voice telling her to rest. For several more days, fever dreams haunted her, and the line between reality and delirium blurred. At last, the fever broke. When she opened her eyes, the first solid figure she saw was Mrs. Hayes's lined face, full of steadfast concern. Soft linens pressed her skin instead of the punishing chill of snow. She realized she was in a sturdy bed within an unfamiliar but comforting bedroom. The crackle of logs in the fireplace calmed her nerves, and the smell of fresh coffee wafted in, stirring her appetite. She managed a parched whisper, asking where she was, as Hayes revealed she was in the grand ranch house of Wyatt Sanders, who had found her by sheer chance in Ironwood Valley. Although her body remained weak, Anna felt a flicker of gratitude and a ripple of dread. She knew the Calhouns would not be content to have her simply vanish. They would want closure, and if they learned she was alive, they would not rest until they finished what they started. Wyatt Sanders entered the guest room, stepping lightly so as not to startle her. He was taller than she remembered, though her recollections were clouded by fever. His broad shoulders and steady eyes exuded both resolve and compassion qualities. Anna's sense came naturally to him. Mrs. Hayes rose from her chair, greeting him with a nod. Anna tried to sit up and offer thanks, but Wyatt raised a hand, urging her to stay still. He asked if she felt well enough to speak. Anna swallowed, her throat still scratchy, and managed to share snippets of her story: the settlement, Elder Horner, Harriet, and Amos Calhoun, and how they deemed her refusal to remarry an act of sinful pride. Wyatt's features hardened. He had heard rumors of that settlement's harsh ways, though never first-hand accounts as damning as Anna's. When she fell silent, he produced a handful of pages from his coat pocket, her torn diary entries half blurred by melted snow. Reading them had made it clear that her abandonment was no accident. Anna apologized for dragging trouble to his doorstep, but Wyatt simply waved away her concerns. "You've done nothing wrong," he said quietly. "You needed help, and I was there to provide it. None of us here will stand by while someone suffers because of another's cruelty." The finality in his tone surprised Anna. She was not used to such unwavering support. Wyatt's generosity, she soon discovered, extended to his entire household. Mrs. Hayes placed Anna under her personal care. The ranch hands, led by Tompkins, offered respectful nods whenever they glimpsed her, as though she were a new member of their extended family. Nevertheless, trouble arrived sooner than anyone expected. A messenger boy from the settlement delivered a letter, nailing it to the ranch gate under the cover of dusk. Tompkins retrieved the letter at dawn and handed it to Wyatt, who read it aloud. The message dripped with sanctimonious language, accusing Wyatt of harboring a woman who had rejected her God-given duties and demanding her return to face correction. It was signed in the settlement's name, but the content clearly reflected the Calhoun's hatred and Elder Horner's twisted preachings. Alarm flickered in Anna's eyes as Wyatt finished reading. She knew from bitter experience that Harriet and Amos Calhoun, along with Elder Horner, rarely issued threats without intent to follow through. Wyatt didn't appear surprised. Instead, he calmly told Tompkins to increase their patrols, especially around the ranch boundaries. He instructed his men never to venture outside alone. Anna, for her part, was advised to remain close to the house. Fear warred with relief inside her chest. She wanted her independence to prove she wasn't a helpless victim, yet she also recognized the danger. Harriet and Amos would not hesitate to kill her if the opportunity arose. Day by day, her strength returned, assisted by warm meals, the crackling fireplace, and gentle care. Wyatt would visit her after overseeing ranch duties, occasionally bringing new bits of information about the settlement's moves. Their conversations remained polite, but an unspoken tension simmered beneath. Anna could sense he felt responsible not just for her safety, but for ensuring justice prevailed, a task that seemed monumental in a territory where laws could be bent by those with the loudest voices or deepest pockets. Anna soon found a sense of purpose within the ranch's daily bustle. Mrs. Hayes let her help in the kitchen, kneading dough for bread and preparing hearty stews. At first, Anna believed she was merely repaying Wyatt's kindness by contributing her labor. But she discovered that focusing on these simple tasks provided solace from haunting memories. The ranch hands were quick to notice the difference in their meals. Fresh biscuits and savory soups brought unexpected comfort to the men who were used to basic fare. Friendly banter and appreciative words flowed more freely. One morning, while she was stirring a pot of oatmeal over the large wood-burning stove, Wyatt appeared in the doorway. He watched her for a moment, then gently pointed out she need not feel obligated to work. She was still healing. Blushing slightly, Anna explained how the routine gave her balance, something to focus on beyond her past. His eyes lit with empathy, and he nodded, respecting her choice. From that day on, she established herself as an integral part of the household. No longer just a guest clinging to life, but a contributor. It wasn't long before Anna ventured outside, at first, cautiously. She would wrap herself in a thick shawl and explore the ranch yard. She met the barn animals, learned the horses' names, and carried scraps to the chickens. Even the ranch dogs warmed up to her, wagging their tails at her gentle presence. Each step away from the house reminded her that fear did not have to define her. She'd survived an unthinkable ordeal, and she intended to reclaim a life beyond constant terror. During one of her walks, she found Wyatt working in the corral, training a spirited mare that had been mistreated by its previous owner. He spoke soothing words, coaxing the horse to trust him, and Anna felt a twinge of understanding. She too was learning to trust again. When he offered to let her greet the mare, Anna hesitated only briefly before stepping forward. The horse snorted, trembling at first but calmed when Anna gently stroked its muzzle. They traded a small, shared moment, both horse and woman uncertain, both learning that gentleness could be stronger than brute force. Whispers of new tensions arrived on the wind. Townsfolk began reporting sightings of settlement riders near the edges of Sanders' ranch, lurking among pines or perched on hilltops, as though scouting Tompkins increased the night watch. Several ranch hands armed themselves more heavily, maintaining a vigilant eye on the horizon. At night, Anna lay awake, hearing the creak of floorboards as men moved about with rifles. The knowledge that people stood guard for her sake weighed heavily on her heart. She didn't want anyone to suffer or die because of her conflict with the Calhouns. Yet she saw no other option but to stand firm alongside Wyatt and his people. Running away would accomplish nothing. These were enemies that thrived on cowardice. Wyatt offered the reassurance she needed late one evening when she could not sleep. She found him in his study, examining a ranch map by lamplight. He looked up as she approached, his expression calm despite the looming crisis. "We've got this land and each other," he reminded her. "They won't take that away, not without a fight." The following week brought an ominous warning sign. A stretch of fence on the ranch's northern boundary was deliberately torn down, the wood splintered, and a crude cross carved into one of the posts. Tompkins discovered it during his morning rounds and galloped back to the ranch house, fury radiating off him. Wyatt, Anna, and several hands rode out to inspect the damage. The sight of that cross made Anna's stomach lurch. It echoed the settlement's twisted practice of claiming divine right for their cruelties. Wyatt stood over the shattered post, his jaw taut. "They're trying to send a message," he said, voice low. "But they've made a mistake thinking we scare so easily." He told Tompkins to assign more men to patrol at night. Anna wished she could be out there helping, if only to prove she was no longer the frightened woman who'd been left in the snow. Yet she remembered Harriet's venomous words, Elder Horner's self-righteous scowl and Amos's threatening gaze. Their group had a long history of bullying anyone who questioned them. That afternoon, Marshall Grant, the local lawman, rode up the ranch drive, having heard rumors of heightened tensions. He was a tall, weathered man who had spent years keeping a fragile peace in the territory, balancing official duties with frontier realities. He met with Wyatt in the ranch yard, tipping his hat politely to Anna as she stood nearby. The marshal revealed that he'd received complaints from Elder Horner, claiming Wyatt was harboring an unrepentant sinner. The complaint mentioned restitution or punishment in the settlement's name. The marshal's lips tightened in disgust as he relayed the message. "I've seen how Horner and the Calhouns operate," he remarked. "They twist the law to suit themselves. But in this territory, vigilante justice won't stand." When the marshal departed, he left them with a caution. "I can't post deputies here all day, but I'll do what I can. If you defend yourselves and keep me informed, I'll make sure the law leans your way." Wyatt's gaze followed the marshal until he vanished down the road. Then he turned back to Anna, his expression guarded yet determined. She understood what weighed on him. The law might be on their side in principle, but Horner's influence ran deep, and the Calhouns had money and power to sway judges and local officials. That evening, the ranch turned eerily quiet, each person bracing for something worse. Yet within the house, life found new rhythms. Anna continued her daily kitchen work. Surprising Mrs. Hayes in the ranch hands with various breads, preserves, and roasted meats that filled the air with a warm, comforting aroma. Despite the tension, the communal meals provided a sense of unity. Hardened cowboys used to simple beans, and biscuits reveled in her cooking. In return, they offered her sincere respect, even gratitude. Some quietly promised that if the Calhouns or Elder Horner tried anything, they wouldn't be coming for Anna alone. They'd be coming for all of Sanders' ranch. Meanwhile, Anna's connection with Wyatt deepened in unspoken ways. Their interactions exchanging a quick, reassuring glance when they passed in the hallway, a soft word of praise for her cooking, or his gentle reminders to rest, wove a tapestry of mutual regard that went beyond mere gratitude. As tensions mounted, the fragile seeds of something like love took root, though both hesitated to name it in the midst of looming confrontation. The confrontation soon arrived in the form of a large party of riders pushing across the open pasture toward the ranch under a moonless sky. The ranch hands on patrol fired warning shots into the air, and shouts tore through the darkness. Anna woke with a start, her heart hammering. She leapt out of bed and quickly pulled on boots, rushing to join Mrs. Hayes at an upstairs window. Flickers of torchlight illuminated the yard, revealing men with rifles and scowling faces. Anna spotted Amos Calhoun among them, and a jolt of dread rippled through her. Wyatt, Tompkins, and the other ranch hands had already formed a defensive line near the fence. The muzzle flashes of rifles lit the night bullets whizzing past. From her vantage point, Anna could see the attackers' strategy. A few men attempted to rush the barn and set it aflame, while others used the cover of darkness to move closer to the ranch house. Wyatt's voice sliced through the tumult, instructing his men to hold their ground and avoid reckless charges. The night erupted into chaos. Horses neighed in panic. Wounded men cried out, and the acrid stench of gunpowder filled the air. Anna's hands trembled, but she steadied herself, holding a rifle Mrs. Hayes had handed her earlier in case of dire need. This was unlike anything she had experienced before. Yet for all the terror, a fierce resolve bubbled up inside her. She recalled how Harriet Amos and Elder Horner had tried to strip away her dignity, how they had left her to freeze. If she fled now, she would be surrendering her second chance at life. She scanned the yard, her gaze locking onto Amos. He was barking orders, urging men to break past the ranch defenders. At one point, Anna saw him raise his rifle toward Wyatt. Panic flared, and with trembling determination, she took aim. Her shot rang out, catching Amos's horse in the flank instead of hitting him directly. The horse reared, throwing Amos down. That brief moment of confusion gave Wyatt and Tompkins time to regroup. Driving the intruders back from the barn, Anna rushed downstairs, ignoring Mrs. Hayes's pleas to stay hidden. She pushed her way to the porch. From there, she had a clearer angle on the battle and could fire if necessary. Wyatt, spotting her, shouted for her to take cover, but she shook her head resolutely. She would not cower any longer. Bullets whistled nearby, splintering porch pillars. Anna flattened herself against the wall, reloading with shaky hands. She could hear Harriet Calhoun's shrill voice somewhere in the darkness, screaming accusations of blasphemy and sin. One of the ranch hands, Eli Rogers, was flung off his horse after taking a hit to the shoulder. Without hesitation, Anna dashed from the porch to drag him to partial safety, then fired 2 warning shots overhead at the men approaching. This unexpected show of defiance from someone they had assumed helpless forced them to pause. That was all Wyatt needed to rally his men, pushing the attackers back. Gradually, the tide of battle turned. The Calhouns' men, unprepared for the fierce resistance, began to retreat. Elder Horner, who had been hanging back to oversee this supposed holy crusade, snarled curses when it became clear his side was losing. In a final attempt to claim moral high ground, he bellowed at Wyatt to surrender, Anna claiming it was divine justice for her to be punished. Wyatt's response came in the form of another well-aimed shot that sent Horner's horse rearing. Seeing no path to victory, Horner gestured angrily for the remaining riders to fall back into the night. By dawn, the ranch yard was littered with spent cartridges, bloodstains on the trampled snow, and the groans of wounded men, both friend and foe. Though battered, Sanders' ranch had held Mrs. Hayes, and Anna worked tirelessly, tending to injured ranch hands and even those of the attackers who were too badly wounded to flee. Wyatt insisted that no one else die if it could be prevented. "We are not murderers," he said firmly. "We won't stoop to their level." His words resonated with everyone who had fought through that long, harrowing night. Among the wounded was Amos Calhoun, nursing a broken rib and a deep gash on his forehead. He cursed at Anna when she approached to clean his wound, but she merely pressed her lips together, treating him with the same care she gave Eli Rogers. Harriet Calhoun, however, had fled accompanied by Horner and a handful of their men. It was a hollow victory, but a victory nonetheless. The ranch emerged stronger in spirit, if weaker in body. Marshal Grant arrived not long after the sun rose, bringing with him a small force of deputies. He surveyed the aftermath with grim understanding, then listened to the accounts of those who had defended the ranch. Sighing, he said, "We've long suspected Horner and the Calhouns of dark dealings, but this is enough to bring federal eyes onto them." He took statements from Wyatt, Anna, and various others, shaking his head at the brutality inflicted under the guise of religion. He assured them that he would file urgent reports and see that justice was done. Yet as he prepared to leave, he warned that Horner's influence extended far, and the conflict might not be over. In the days that followed, a flood of evidence poured in. Refugees from the settlement, emboldened by hearing how Anna had survived and how the ranch stood firm, began seeking sanctuary on Sanders' ranch land. Some arrived with horrifying stories of forced marriages, punishments cloaked in piety, and suspicious deaths. A few women carried bruises and injuries, while others brought documents, letters, or hidden diaries that laid bare the Calhouns and Elder Horner's tyranny. Each revelation hardened Wyatt's determination and fueled Anna's resolve. They collected testimonies, compiled proof, and worked closely with Marshal Grant. The battered ranch house became a hub of truth where secrets once cloaked in religious authority were dragged into the open. A pivotal breakthrough came when Harriet Calhoun herself arrived at the ranch gate one bleak afternoon, bruised and subdued. She explained in a trembling voice that Amos had turned on her after the failed attack, blaming her for his downfall. Fearing for her life, she sought refuge with the very people she had once despised. Wyatt allowed her inside, though many ranch hands regarded her with open suspicion. Harriet insisted she had vital information about Elder Horner's corruption, forged documents, land deeds stolen from widows, and hush money paid to lawmen. If Wyatt and Anna would shelter her, she would show them proof that might finally topple the settlement's power structure. Anna and Harriet shared a tense reunion. Once upon a time, Harriet had been the one to sneer in the cold, urging men to cast Anna into Ironwood Valley. But now Harriet stood contrite, admitting she'd lived in fear of her brother Amos and Elder Horner's wrath for years. Her own compliance had contributed to the cruelty. Guilt lined her face as she recounted how she'd witnessed the death of Amos's first wife, which was no mere accident, but a deliberate act. She'd been too frightened to stop Anna, listened torn between anger and pity. If Harriet truly intended to atone, perhaps this was the moment to break the cycle of silence and fear. Marshal Grant returned with additional deputies, and working with Wyatt and Anna began the formal process of gathering statements. The ranch's main parlor became a de facto office, stacks of ledgers, diaries, and sworn testimonies piling high on every surface. Harriet led them to Amos's hidden records stashed in a cave near the settlement, containing shocking evidence of blackmail and racketeering. More settlers stepped forward, each adding fuel to the growing fire that would surely engulf Elder Horner and the Calhouns. Meanwhile, the ranch itself saw rapid changes. Families fleeing the settlement needed shelter, and makeshift accommodations sprang up in barns and storage buildings. Despite the strain on resources, Wyatt refused to turn anyone away. Anna organized the distribution of food, clothing, and medical care alongside Mrs. Hayes. Each evening, she and Wyatt would collapse into chairs in the study, emotionally and physically drained, yet buoyed by hope. The path to justice was perilous, but they were forging it brick by brick. During quiet moments, Anna found herself drawn to Wyatt in ways that transcended mere gratitude. They would exchange smiles over a shared pot of coffee or gently tease each other about the daily chaos of running a rapidly expanding refuge. One night, while poring over evidence with tired eyes, Wyatt placed his hand softly over Anna's, telling her how proud he was of her courage. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she realized she felt for him something deeper than she had believed possible after Nathan's death. And judging by the warmth in Wyatt's gaze, the feeling was mutual. They had faced mortal danger side by side, and in that crucible they had discovered a bond that both frightened and thrilled her. As more testimonies came to light, Marshal Grant secured enough proof to warrant federal intervention. Representatives from the territorial courts rode into the region, prepared to dismantle the settlement's corrupt leadership. Elder Horner and Amos Calhoun went into hiding, but their stronghold was crumbling from within. Betrayed followers started cooperating with investigators in exchange for leniency, detailing every scandalous aspect of the twisted regime. The day that Horner and Amos were finally tracked down by federal marshals, a collective sigh of relief rippled through Sanders Ranch. Anna was in the kitchen with Mrs. Hayes when Tompkins burst in, announcing that Horner had been placed under arrest. Amos with him, even Harriet, who had once been an antagonist, breathed a shaky sigh of relief. A wave of emotions washed over Anna: vindication, sorrow for the women who had suffered, and a surprising sense of renewal. Every step she and Wyatt had taken to defend truth and protect the vulnerable had led to this resolution. The settlement would either rebuild itself under honest leadership or fade away entirely, but either path meant the end of the tyranny that had nearly claimed her life. That evening, with legal documents signed and the main perpetrators secured, the ranch erupted in a spontaneous celebration. People gathered in the yard, playing music, sharing food, and raising glasses to freedom. Families reunited, children played without fear, and faces that once showed only anxiety now radiated joy. At the center of the festivities stood Anna and Wyatt, exchanging smiles that spoke volumes. It wasn't just a celebration of victory. It was a celebration of rebirth for the ranch, for the refugees, and for themselves. In the midst of the revelry, Wyatt led Anna away to a quieter corner of the yard. Lantern light flickered over the two of them as he gently took her hand. Hesitation flickered in his eyes, but only for a moment. Then, with a warm intensity in his voice, he thanked her for her courage, for standing beside him when others would have fled, for bringing new life into a place that had once known only routine. Anna felt tears blur her vision. She recalled Nathan's final words, urging her to live, truly love, despite her grief. And here she was, on the threshold of a different kind of future, having honored Nathan's memory, yet finding space in her heart for someone else. When Wyatt asked if she would remain at the ranch, if she would share the life they were building, Anna answered with a heartfelt yes. The next day they filed the necessary papers in town, announcing their intention to wed. The ranch hands cheered when they heard the news, crowing about how it was high time Wyatt found happiness. As for Anna, she felt a sense of both serene peace and electric excitement. She was no longer the frightened widow left to freeze in Ironwood Valley. She was alive, free, and finally ready to embrace a future she never imagined was possible. A year later, a photographer arrived at Sanders Ranch, hauling a bulky camera and a tripod through the gates. The ranch yard pulsed with live horses flicking their tails, fresh green shoots spreading across the pasture. New faces greeting old friends. The final remnants of snow clung to the mountains, but spring's warmth dominated the air. Wyatt helped the photographer set up near the main house while Anna stood on the porch cradling her infant son Samuel in her arms. The child cooed, oblivious to the significance of the day. When everyone was ready, ranch hands, refugees turned neighbors. Harriet Calhoun, who had reinvented her life, Tompkins, with his newly promoted responsibilities, and even Marshall Grant, who had arrived for a friendly visit, they assembled on the broad porch steps. Mrs. Hayes stood front and center, her hair carefully pinned back, a proud smile curving her lips. The photographer counted down, and the magnesium flash lit up the scene, capturing a moment that symbolized triumph over every dark hardship they had endured. Anna felt a lump in her throat as she realized how far they had come since the night Wyatt found her in the snow. Within weeks, the portrait was framed and hung in the main hallway, becoming a conversation piece for all who passed through. Sometimes Anna paused to trace her finger over the faces captured there. She marveled at how so many stories of pain, bravery, and hope had converged on these grounds, forging bonds stronger than blood. Outside, the ranch had expanded with new buildings erected to house the influx of families wanting a fresh start away from the broken settlement. Harriet, stepping away from her old life of denial, now ran a small school where she taught reading, writing, and moral lessons based on empathy rather than fear. And each day she atoned for her past by nurturing the children whose parents had once trembled before Elder Horner's tyranny. On a warm morning not long after the photo was hung, Wyatt and Anna took a ride through Ironwood Valley. The site where she'd been left to die was unrecognizable in the glow of spring. Wildflowers swayed in gentle breezes. Songbirds chattered in the clear sky. Anna held Samuel against her as she inhaled the sweet scent of blooming grass, recalling the suffocating cold that had nearly ended her. Beside her, Wyatt reined in his horse, surveying the valley with a thoughtful expression. He didn't speak for a while, allowing the vast silence of nature to fill in what words could not. Then quietly he said, "I never used to believe in fate, but I thank the good Lord I wandered this way when I did." Anna smiled, her eyes stinging with unshed tears of gratitude. She glanced down at Samuel, then at Wyatt, and remembered her first husband's kind spirit. Nathan's memory would never fade. She carried it with her, along with a profound sense of appreciation for her second chance. Life had stitched together her broken pieces with threads of courage, love, and unyielding resolve. As they turned their horses back toward the ranch, Anna gently stroked Wyatt's hand. She wasn't sure what the future held, only that they would meet it together, standing firm against any darkness, sowing seeds of hope in every uncharted corner, and cherishing each new dawn as a gift that once seemed impossible to claim. In the end, Anna and Wyatt proved that strength and compassion could overcome even the darkest forces. The settlement's corruption was dismantled, justice restored, and Sanders Ranch flourished as a beacon of hope for all who sought a second chance. From the bitter cold of Ironwood Valley to the warm embrace of newfound family, Anna discovered her true courage and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. We'd love to hear your thoughts about Anna's bravery, Wyatt's determination, and the resilience of all those who stood with them. Leave your comments below. Do you believe redemption is always possible, even for those who've made grave mistakes? Let's discuss together.